and welcome to the latest edition of the Techstrong Gang. I'm your host, Mike Bizarre. Today we're going to be talking about, well, is AI really a danger to humanity? According to some folks who sent some letters to the Congress and other places, it sure is. Then we're going to talk about AI and the laws of physics because, well, it turns out that AI is going to get into these robots, but we got to train it first, and there's a lot of work to be done in that space. And then finally, we're going to talk about Intel versus NVIDIA and AMD. There's a big conference in China or Taiwan specifically, and there's a lot of competitive issues. Stay tuned. You're watching Techstrong Gang. All right, welcome back. Our gang today consists of Mark Hinkle, who I'm not sure where Mark is these days. Mark, where are you?
I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina.
All right. And then we have Mitch Ashley, as always, in Denver, Mountain High. Mm-hmm. And finally, Bonnie Schneider's here with us in Boca Raton, hanging out with me, and it's always a privilege.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Great to be here.
All right. Our first topic is this letter that 13 former AI employees of various organizations published this past week. Basically, it was saying that there's not enough oversight of how AI is being applied by all these companies who are using for-profit models. It's heavens to Betsy. They're saying that capitalists might do things that are maybe not in the interest of society at large. That might come as a shock to some of you. But Mark, let's start with you. As you think about all this, what's your take on this? I mean, on one hand, it sounds very serious. On the other hand, I always thought 13 people signed this thing, so you would think for something that was kind of super dangerous that more people would be signing on.
Yeah. So, I think that every time, this is historical, like whenever any new technology comes about, people do get, a little bent out of shape about how it's going to affect our lives and it's going to be disruptive. And personally, I'm glad I get to drive my car to, the store and places like that rather than feed a horse or walk. But when you're in the moment, it seems big and scary and new and disruptive. But right now, as I look at this, AI is very, very impressive. It's made a big leap in 2 years. It's in the news. Everybody's talking about it. It's in the forefront of our mind. But at the end of the day, people call it a stochastic parrot. I mean, it basically is a very, very powerful application of computers to infer things. It doesn't have good reasoning. My dog is your dog, your cat, whatever has better reasoning than these models. And so I believe the 13 people were folks that worked in AI safety that are no longer employed. So, I think that they're probably not totally wrong, but they're not totally right either. So where it stands today is things are changing. These models are really, really interesting. They've gotten really, really powerful, and they've been front and center in our news and in our lives. But at the end of the day, where they're at today, it's not, there is no Terminator situation coming about that I see.
All right, Mitchell, do you agree? Because I think Mark just called these people a bunch of Luddites, but I don't.
Well, I have to tap out on stochastic. I have to Google that one first. So it's too early in the morning for us to process that. I think the thing about AI that relates so much to there's so many parameters that relate to people and how this might impact us, whether it's our jobs, our livelihood, of course, and are we going to become useful or unuseful because of AI and be replaced by AI? Of course, we also have the kind of science fiction genre, the dystopian AI-mageddon kind of scenarios, the Terminator, and virtually every science fiction movie starts out with, everything got wiped out on the earth and the people left solved these problems, and it usually involves some form of AI or robotics. But that's what I think the closest analog for me is. I remember when robotics were being introduced into manufacturing, and we all saw in Japan the robots that were doing welding or assembling parts or whatever it might have been. And of course, we thought this is going to be the personless manufacturing line. And a lot of things moved to being handled by robotics, but people didn't go away. We still have a lot of people in the system where it's designing, doing other jobs as part of manufacturing, evolving to new roles as well. And I think that's in this evolution. Is this the end of the Earth and humanity as we know it? Pick up any sci-fi book and you all know the answer to that. But I think that's we live the future we create. So let's create the future that we want, and hopefully the robot overlords don't take over and AI kills us.
All right. Well, Mark and Mitch are a little on the geeky side of life, and I'm like halfway there. I think that the general population sees these articles and these announcements, and what's your sense? Do you think people are going to get overly concerned because they don't really understand the math? All they know is there's a bunch of AI stuff happening, and people are talking about changing their jobs, and everybody kind of goes, well, I'll believe it when I see it, but B, then they get a little wiggy.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. I mean, we have an uncertain economic climate at the present, and a lot of people losing jobs. So they're on edge, thinking this is one more reason I have to worry, and I have to know how this is going to affect me. I think on the flip side of it, that's what's generating the interest. I think that a lot of people that maybe weren't so concerned about AI and thought, well, this is just another one of those, like you said, geeky things. Once it starts having the possibility of affecting them, then people are taking a deeper dive into it. And the more that they find out, there's certain personality types, I would imagine, that would be threatened and scared. But I don't know, the story if the threat to humanity has some basis that or they're just overreacting. It's hard to say.
Mark, do we need some sort of review committee that's looking at all this stuff that's kind of maybe an independent arbiter? Because, sometimes the tech folks are, too far on pushing everything to the metal. You hear stories about parties in Silicon Valley where it's AI bro culture, where it's just like, devil be damned, we're going to automate everything with AI and we'll see what happens later. To, folks who are like, well, we need something, but it's not going to be the politicians that figure it out.
Well, I'll liken it to politicians as anybody that would be qualified to be part of that oversight committee wouldn't want the job. Just like, it's really, how are you going to give someone the power to do that can actually be malleable to the way things change, that has the authority, that has the know-how. So, I mean, I'd like to think that markets regulate themselves. And the biggest thing that we have to worry about is, bad actors, but that doesn't matter if it's a company or, criminals. So I think what we really need to do is, have the SEC has put in, different mandates about greenwashing and now AI washing in companies. And I think that there should be some kind of reporting structure, just like if you had a hazardous material, if you handle uranium, that should be, disclosed. The same thing is if you have a powerful AI that has capabilities that are beyond the scope of what would be, publicly disclosed, that you should probably have to disclose that as well. But it's a hard thing to regulate. It's like, two trains going in opposite directions and trying to sync up at the right time. It's just a very, very impractical thing to do.
So basically, we got to buckle up, Buttercup, and hope for the best. But Mitch, do you think that the tech crowd kind of has that, shall we say, appreciation for the social impact that they're having? Or are they just looking at it and saying, wow, there's a lot of cool math and some interesting things we can do, and they're not really thinking through the impact?
I think it's there, whether it's in the forefront of our minds or kind of just part of our thought pattern. I just think the human nature of inventing and innovating and the financial drive of companies and potentially even the regulation I'm most fearful is that we just don't repeat again what we did with the social media companies and make them unaccountable, unsuable, if you will. for their actions in the AI realm. It's there, but I think people innovate, and that's going to happen. Innovation happens, whether you try to stop it or not. It's still going to happen. So I don't. There may be people who are more socially conscious of that. We saw that with the OpenAI AI former employees letter that they wrote, and we're going to continue to see that. We'll see it from scientists. We'll see it from all folks. And actually, I'm actually encouraged that, because I think it keeps the issue of safety with AI on, in the dialogue and on the forefront. Whether it makes a big impact or not, I don't know. But if we are talking about, how do we maintain safety? How do we maintain some transparency, enough transparency to build trust in AI, humans' trust in AI? I think that's what's vital. It's going to happen. We're already using it today. We just don't know it. Apple's, Worldwide Developer Conference, my prediction is we're going to find out, all the all the MPU capabilities that are built into the Apple chips for so long they've never talked about. Well, guess what? They're all there. Maybe they're opened up for us to start using. Maybe they've been heavily used. We just didn't know about it. So I think, AI is already in our pocket, on our computer, in our TV, and everywhere, and it's just going to grow.
I also think that it's, I was mentioning that we're all polarized right now. I think that if they were to have a committee that were to do that, people would focus on what each person thinks is, quote, good, and another person thinks is evil. I don't think it would be unanimous. I think there'd be some shades of gray of what someone might see as good versus evil, what an AI can do. Now, of course, there will be some agreement, and I think Mitch brings up a great example about social media. Social media was so exciting when we all got onto Facebook and all these outlet platforms, but now there's some serious concerns of the damage it's done, particularly to teenagers. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we don't know all the dangers or the quote unquote evil that AI can do until time goes on and we experience it.
Mm-hmm. Mark, to her point, I don't think, folks in China and Russia are standing around going, what are the niceties of implementing AI? So it feels like, to me, we're locked into this ride no matter what, because, it's just the nature of the game, and we can't control what everybody else is doing.
Right. I mean, I think that the only defense we have as a society is to be well educated on it, and then, that's probably more of a personal mandate for everyone, because you could be scared and that does nothing, or you can educate yourself on this and then have an educated diatribe about what is acceptable and what isn't. I think right now, after 30 years of sci-fi movies where the evil robots and the AI takes over and destroys society, it's been supplanted in our mind that, this is bad. And I think it's probably because it's unknown, as we've only seen that side of things. And so, and people want to be cautious, because if we are opening Pandora's box, you can't close it. But the way I see it as someone who spends time on AI every day is, I think that we need to keep it in the news. Safety and trust have to be part of it. Data privacy has to be part of the dialogue. But we know governments are terrible at regulating bad stuff. Look at, the tobacco industry. We had the big tobacco industry settlement, and smoking is down. But every time I go in to grab a soda at the convenience store, there's stacks and stacks of death sticks behind the counter. So, I don't think that our government is equipped to regulate dangerous things in the way that it probably should be. So hopefully the good diatribe between all of us, pushes the boundaries of what's socially acceptable for AI.
I'll agree and disagree with that. So in the energy sector, we saw scientists create similar letters over the years, right? And basically, last time I checked, the government was regulating nuclear energy, and nothing in this country apparently is close, but nothing's quite blown up yet. So maybe we do need some sort of agency for AI. I don't know.
Well, that is interesting, because there's a lot of debate going on in that community and sustainability about it, because there's a race to have the strongest and the most advanced output, like we're seeing with NVIDIA. But then at the same time, Many are saying, at what cost? Do we all need to have the most super powered software every day? Or, I mean, I guess what I'm saying, is it necessary for everyone to have that level of energy use? So I think that there will be some pushback for sure. There already is, and depending on energy efficiency. But what's interesting, I've found, is that anytime a company is making announcements about new advances in AI, there's typically a mention of sustainability and an additional announcement of how this is going to be more energy efficient as we grow, like with Intel. Part of their announcement is that what we're offering is going to be more energy efficient. And that was also something NVIDIA mentioned, and others recently in Microsoft. So I think that they'll go hand in hand. Now, if we're going to talk about a superpowered AI, we also have to address sustainability.
Hey, Mark, am I going to get rationed on my AI usage based on how much energy I'm consuming? What do you think?
Well, I think that the thing that is interesting is it's new. It does consume a lot of power, and there's a huge demand for it. But I do think that will all level out. If I look at the energy efficiency and of all these things, they will get better. Just like chips got more powerful and did more work per watt, the same thing will happen here. But right now, when all of a sudden you see a big spike, we don't look at the graph and look at where it's level. We look at it where there's a big change. And right now there's a big change. If I was looking at solving the problem, I'd probably look at the root cause of why we care about energy so much. And we have, fossil fuels. We don't use clean nuclear. We, do not use as much solar as we could. And it's all about the economics of it, because if you believe Elon Musk, I generally believe a lot of what he says, you would only need 100 square miles of solar to power the whole United States. But the problem then is distributing that. So, AI consumes a lot of power. But the problem that exacerbates that is our power grid is not modernized and efficient and using enough clean energy.
If only Alan was here at the mention of Elon Musk.
So I'm going to give you the last word on this topic, because I know you got to go. But thoughts, parting words.
As I mentioned earlier, it was Steve Jobs that made some kind of a statement about inventing the future, right? And that's where we are again, right? What's our future of AI look like? It's up to us. At least right now, AI is not in the habit of inventing itself quite yet. Maybe that'll happen somewhere down the road. I think we're all in the kinetic phase of AI, learning ourselves, hands-on, working with it, seeing what you can do with AI, both in applications of tools and third-party products that we acquire, but also how we build AI into our software, machine learning or generative AI, whatever it might be, models, etc. So I encourage everyone to become their own AI expert, at least in their own skill set, to understand AI better and how to leverage it. And I think that knowledge will help us sort of sort through the fiction and the worry and what's real and what's not, and then contribute to the conversation about how we make AI for the good of all of us.
All right, folks, we'll be back in a minute, but we're going to talk about, AI, training AI, among other things. See you in a second.
Cloud Native Now is the web's leading resource for the growing cloud native ecosystem. CloudNativeNow.com is your destination for news, thought leadership, features, and webinars on cloud native architecture, Kubernetes, serverless, cloud native application development, microservices, service mesh, cloud native security, and more. Stay on the cutting edge of modern application development at Cloud Native Now.
All right, folks, and we're back, and we're talking about AI and the laws of physics. So way over in Taiwan, there was a conference called Computex, and Jensen Huang was there talking about the next generation of GPUs, which are called Rubin. And one of the things he pointed out was that AI today doesn't really understand the laws of physics, and that we would have to actually go train AI models that would find their way into robots about how to actually move around and understand, the relationships between velocity and impact and all these things, which would require a significant amount of time in what he called the omniverse, which he also referred to as essentially the AI gymnasium for training the next generation of robots. So we seem to be on the cusp of something happening here. We've talked about robots before, but Mark, Is this the next wave? I mean, if Ruben shows up in 2026, are we looking at humanoid-like robots that are able to move about with us in 2028, 2029?
Well, I think that the gotcha is going to be the actual input for the physical world. So right now we have vision, we have audio, and we have natural language. And those things can make inferences around the world, but we really need the feedback. So if I like to mention that the AI is not as smart as my dog, but part of the reason it's not as smart as my dog is because the dog has the input from the tactile world, and it gets actual feedback on what physics is. So I think for these robots to truly be, what you have to do now is sort of predict how, if I drop this, it's going to fall. If I get hit by this stick, it's going to hurt. Those kinds of things. I'm going to observe those force. So part of the problem for all of these things to move around in the world is to actually get all those inputs. A 4-year-old child, for example, has taken more inputs than ChatGPT's open or GPT 4.0 model, because they're getting all of that sight and sound and language and smell and taste and all of these things around the world that these models can't be. So I think that's the limiting factor. And then Jensen's 100% right, is you have to have powerful enough AI to process all that and then do that. So I think he's probably, well, I know he's smarter than me and is probably understands the realistic outcomes. But for me right now, the limiting factor is just enough input to give you the correct output to have a robot butler or a robot, in the news this week, I saw the lady who wanted the robot to do her dishes and to her laundry so that she could do her art and her writing. And I think it's right, but I think that until you get those things, you can't train a robot to fold laundry until it has that sort of feedback from the physical world.
Especially if you have your own special technique on how you want your laundry folded, right? But I think that we are seeing some steps in this direction, because if we look at the most popular AI tools, they're all about doing the, quote, mundane tasks so we can be more productive in our important jobs. And we give, the AI, the lower level, that's what it's being marketed, really, that AI is more like your assistant, and it's not, you're still doing the important work, but AI can do the busy work.
What chores am I going to assign my kids if the robots do?
They'll assign it. They'll delegate it to a robot.
How will they learn to become adults if they don't actually do stuff? Are you looking forward to this age of robots? I mean, and how many do you think you might need?
Well, like I was saying a few days ago, I realized I didn't need Google Home and Alexa's in every room, because I'm getting a lot of different answers. So maybe just one obedient one that can do everything. I think we had one at work, one at home, but I like it. I welcome it. I mean, obviously it shouldn't be a substitute for things that take away from humanity, that, you're still having that interaction. That's a big problem now with society. We're, all on our phones. So I think that this shouldn't be a way to keep us all distance. If it's a way to bring us together, great. And if it's a way to improve productivity, I'm all for it.
Mark, are we going to personalize these robots? We tend to take our own emotions and apply it to inanimate things. Or, is it going to be like Jarvis on Iron Man? Are we going to have kind of like a relationship with these robots?
I think that's a big mistake, because when you start giving these things human characteristics, it crosses the boundaries. Like I think that a good example is my Roomba. It uses AI. It actually does a good job. It's a single task thing. But I do not mistake my Roomba as a friend. It's just there to do a task. And it also, going back to my previous point, is I think it's going to be very hard to have a single robot that does all these tasks. I think we're going to see more task-based robots. And when it's task-based, then it doesn't become anthropomorphized, which, has human characteristics. It's going to be, a very, very advanced tool, like probably what my great-great-grandparents would think about our dishwasher or washing machine. The steam cleaning in my dryer, things like that are things that they would have never thought about. but would seem like magic to them today. And I think that's probably where we're going, as these things will be, I hope, just really, really useful tools and not an extension of our family and friends, which is sort of creepy and probably makes it harder to look at them objectively.
Well, one of the things about, speaking of family and friends, AI and AI for good, like we were just talking about, plus robots, is an interesting point I was reading about that for elderly people who often are isolated and alone, and that's been a big problem. We know that not being connected, as I was saying earlier, can result in less longevity in your life. Well, one of the solutions that I've seen for people that are alone are a robot. I don't know if you've seen this, where the seniors are talking, how was your day? My day was good. What are you doing? So it is bringing that interaction. But to Mark's point, it isn't a human. So there is a danger of someone getting, I guess, too attached to the robot. But the people that are using it that I read about seem to be pleased that they're able to just talk.
My father-in-law lives with us. He goes to hang out at the quote-unquote senior center, which he usually refers to as adult daycare. But he says the biggest problem they have is they don't have enough people to handle all the seniors, and there's more seniors than ever. So I wonder, Mark, are we reaching a point where I look around all the time and there's all these jobs and things that aren't being done because we don't have enough people? So have we reached a level or a threshold where we kind of need robots because we're running out of folks to do things?
Yeah, I think we do, for sure. I think that, a lot of these manual jobs that don't require a lot of cognitive problems, like I had to fix a fence this weekend. I would have loved to have a robot post hole digger that could have dug those holes instead of me. I would have loved to have, a robot to carry all the lumber that I did to fix the fence. All those things I think is really good. But there are also there's a huge shortage of skilled labor as well. So I think that, we need welders, we need electricians, we need all of these, we need repair people. We're too much of a disposable society. I think that even though some of these jobs that are menial can't be filled, we can fill them with, smart robots. And we can also, if some of these, blue collar or lower level white collar jobs get, taken away, maybe future is a welder makes six figures, and it's not always that hard of work. It's a little dangerous and dirty, but I think there'll just be shifts. There were blacksmiths that became car mechanics. There were farmers that went into the offices because we were largely an agricultural society in the 1800s. Today we're 80% back then were agriculture. Today, 9% is agriculture. And I think it's just a shift.
I mean, let me get this straight. Doesn't sound you had like a strong sense of personal satisfaction because you fixed the fence this week.
No, I really didn't. I was hot and sweaty and dirty and mad that tree came down and broke my neighbor's fence. So, now I need a robot to clean up the tree because I don't have the desire to carry, 100-foot tree out of the woods piece by piece.
And for every job that's lost, more jobs and opportunities are created. Of course, there'll be businesses that pop up, how to train your robot, how to make your robot like you, things like that. Someone's going to do it. I mean, we're seeing now everybody's saying how to have the perfect prompt for ChatGPT. These are opportunities that we didn't have 5 years ago. So I'm sure as robots become more of our everyday society, we're going to have people that are going to see business opportunities from it.
Speaking of opportunities, there's probably a lawyer out there listening to this and imagining the 35 car pile up because the robot hallucinated. And, there's going to be a lot of legal stuff floating around here.
That's a good point.
And so how do you think that might play out when, my robot burned me with the coffee because it was too hot to, these traffic accidents?
So who does the lawyer sue? Does they sue the robot manufacturer or the person that was working with the robot when it happened? That's going to be a big question. Somebody's going to have to get served.
Mark, what do you think? Liability? If I was maybe, I need a robot lawyer to sue all these people making robots.
I don't know, man. There's a lot of bad drivers out there that aren't robots, and those lawyers are busy. So my hope, and I live in a town where a lot of people didn't learn to drive till they immigrated to America. So you see for middle-aged people who are inexperienced drivers, and there's a lot of accidents in my neighborhood.
I live in a town where there's a lot of elderly folks who probably shouldn't be driving at all. So there's kind of all kinds of fun stuff. And let's not forget all those teenagers who think they're driving when they're just kind of like blindly texting while they're doing whatever it is that they do. Ultimately, how far away do you think all this is? I mean, we talk about it in theory, but we had a show earlier this week talking about all the good that AI could do. And, in the future, maybe robots are fighting fires and doing all kinds of good things that we don't necessarily want to do. But, from what sounds like science fiction to reality, what's your prediction, Mark?
So I think that probably by the end of this decade, by 2030, we will see a lot of what we're talking about today actually becoming a reality. So robots that are really good at mowing our lawn, robots that hopefully are good at fixing fences so I don't have to do it again. AI that really has reasoning abilities to do some of the sort of lower to middle complex tasks, a lot of things that we're doing with, scheduling, logistics, things where they're bounded context. And I think, if we believe Ray Kurzweil, who was probably it's more AI experience than anyone on the planet, he's predicted 2029. So I'd say that's when AGI comes there. And that could be, AGI defined as some intelligence that's non-human, that is, at least the intelligence of a simple lower IQ human. That's what I call AGI, because there's so many definitions. Is when it has the reasoning ability of a moderate to low IQ human being.
All right, folks. I think what he just said is that if a robot someday turns to you and says no, that's AGI. All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, we're back with our third segment, and we're talking about the chip wars as it relates to AI. Again, going back to that Computex conference, Intel was showing some of the details of the inner workings of the processor architecture or system on chip that they're going to use to drive this next generation of AI PCs. Of course, Qualcomm is in that space with some stuff from ARM. AMD is chasing that down, and we're also waiting to see maybe what NVIDIA has planned, because maybe they'll build something someday that is a PC. But Mark, what is your sense of how important are these AI PCs going to be? Do we really need a new generation of these systems to drive AI, or is this just kind of like the PC makers are like, yeah, we got something to sell?
Well, I think that you have the benefit of lower wattage. We had talked earlier today about like power consumption. So lower wattage at the end to do simple tasks, that could be important. I think the bigger issue is just having breaking the logjam of processors that can actually effectively process AI. So NVIDIA is becoming the world's biggest company because of the huge demand for these chips, and it's great. Competition is good. So ARM, Intel, AMD, other chip manufacturers creating chips that can offload everything from what's basically a runaway NVIDIA market for AI is good. I think our phones will have small models. They will process at the edge some of these things, and their power consumption will not be nearly as bad as, the centralized data center problem that we had right now, where they're, largely inefficient and not necessarily the best way to distribute that compute.
are we always going to be dependent upon GPUs? Because to your point, it's probably the most efficient way of going about AI, but it's certainly not as efficient as we may like it to be, because we're using graphical processors that will process things in parallel, but there's a lot of overhead with that. So are there going to be a new generation of processors that we can lean on here for AI that we don't need to use GPUs?
Yeah, I'm sure someday the AI will design their own new chips that are more efficient. But no, seriously, I think that I think there will be an evolution. I do think that LLMs are the way that we are getting our AI gains today. But LLMs, general adversarial networks, all that technology, will evolve. So right now it's evolved because it uses vector math to do a lot of this stuff, and it may change. And I think the problem we also have with the way things are going right now is it's very, very geared towards the hardware we have. So the hardware, it was the same math that we use for games, and 3D graphics is what's in AI. So they became the de facto standard. NVIDIA, which was not a big player 10 years ago, is now eating the world. I think that we'll probably still use a lot of those things, but we might solve it in different ways and with new different chips.
Are you going to be at the front of the line later this year for these new devices, or are you going to wait and see how it all pans out a little bit?
Well, it depends if my old devices break. No, I'm kidding. And I just had to buy a new Google phone for that reason. I guess we'll have to see. It is interesting to see the advancements that are coming, particularly, as I was saying earlier, that you're seeing this piggyback of the sustainability. Anytime they mention something AI, you'll hear more announcements about cooling and how we're going to keep this cool as we have the energy intensity. So the answer is probably yes.
I'm a little suspicious. I think that there'll be new quote unquote software capabilities added over time that are a little more AI centered. And eventually your existing machine will just slow to a crawl and you'll be like, I got to get something that works better and faster. And so that's kind of like the conspiracy theory that gets wrapped around these upgrade cycles. Mark, do you think, is Intel in danger here? I mean, frankly, there's been a bit of a bailout from the U.S. government to help them stay competitive, and we're trying to move more manufacturing back to the U.S., but it seems like there's more competition in this space than ever. So, can they all win, or will some of them fall away?
Well, I don't think that the chip manufacturers in the long term will have the same competitive advantage that they had early on from advanced R&D, because there's a lot more people in the world working on these problems. Intel, it's frankly surprising when you see how small Intel's market cap is compared to some of these other chip manufacturers. So I think that sort of space where becomes more commoditized, just like software becomes more commoditized, unless they come up with some great breakthrough and maybe, they solve the physics problem around quantum computing, or they come up with some, super mind-blowing advancement in technology. But for right now, I think that there's such demand for these processors, and they are just going to be another picks and shovels vendor to the AI revolution, or gold rush, whatever analogy works.
Well, to your point about the economics of AI, today it seems, and I'm wagering that whatever comes out in the fall is going to be more expensive than the laptop I currently have in front of me, because it has quote unquote AI capabilities. And we see that vendors are charging extra for AI capabilities. It's usually an add-on, or it's like, here, pay me $20 extra a month. Is that sustainable, or are we going to get to the point where AI is in everything and we're just going to be part of the standard pricing package, and vendors will have to figure out ways to become more efficient to deliver AI capabilities if they want to be relevant?
Yeah, I think it's a short-term thing, because, I used to refresh my laptop every 18 months or so, and now it's going on 4 and 5, 6 years for my laptop, and it's still adequate. So these vendors who are used to shorter refresh cycles, Apple on the phones, Android vendors on the phones, and all the laptop and device vendors are trying to find ways to, increase the lifetime value of their customers. And so AI seems like a good opportunity for them to draft the hype, but whether or not an AI powered laptop is all that more productive than a, 3-year-old non-AI laptop remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm seeing what you were just talking about, Mike, already into video editing, which is something I like doing. And I look at all the different tools. And just in the past 6 months, so many of these extra add-ons for AI to do this or AI to do that are now coming into one or two companies. So the pay, $5 a month here, $10, it does add up, obviously, like we're seeing with, streaming networks, how many of those are we paying for subscriptions? But I think that as the competition grows, we're going to see a lot of those things that are currently as add-ons being part of the main offering.
Do you think, Mark, that we're going to need to stay current on all this stuff, or will people just skip generations? I know NVIDIA was talking about how, they're now going to be on a yearly cycle for GPU upgrades, when I guess they've been on a 2-year cycle up till now. But I'm sure investors cheered, but I'm pretty sure IT people looked at it and groaned a little bit because they're like, well, now you're telling me you want me to upgrade every year. And I don't know, is that really going to happen, or are we just going to kind of skip generations like we kind of normally do today?
I think we'll skip generations. I honestly don't think that there's any earth-shattering advancements in the hardware that's going to make us have to have the latest. I know that everyone selling a device, a laptop, a tablet would love that, but I just don't think that that's going to go down to the endpoint in the consumer level. I think it'll happen more in the data center because of things we discussed earlier, like power consumption. If they do get better at sipping power, I think that it'll happen if, the key metric will probably be the amount of work per watt. And if that, that is significant, it's going to have a combination of power savings along with the ability to handle more, robust workloads. But for now, I don't see anything that's going to change our world on the hardware side at the consumer and end user at the end of the edge of the network. I think it's mainly in the data center and transport around that.
And frankly, I'm not even sure that it's going to matter all that much in the sense that, we'll be able to do some awesome things with large language models that have more parameters and bigger context windows. But if I'm not mistaken, Mark, I think small language models may have more impact in the future and they won't consume as much resources. So maybe, for all of us who want to optimize specific tasks, and maybe we'll orchestrate that, we may not need the latest and greatest hardware. I don't know. I'm guessing. But what do you think?
I think that we'll probably have something that's sort of an AI router. And that's how some of the large language models that are called mixture of experts work today. Is there'll be multiple models. So there'll be a ChatGPT, an OpenAI GPT-4, which is like our Google. And then we'll have small language models. We'll have Mike model that is all about, journalism and helping us to write better. And we'll have, a Mark model that is crazy about dogs, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and, esoteric quotes from literature. So, and based on the questions you ask, it could route it. So it could route to your device and say, hey, this is a local question, or it could route to OpenAI because it's a general question. And if you're an accountant or if you're, into the weather and climate change like Bonnie, and it'll go to the climate change model because that's the context of the question. And I think that's what the future looks like. So
it sounds like ad tech right now that we're getting, where we look at something and you open up your phone and there's an ad for it, or you said it to a friend on the phone. You're like, how did they know I was thinking about buying that? This is what I feel like this is moving towards that.
How do you think it will play out socially, right? So I get that I might have a bunch of models that I'm asking to do something, but eventually Mike model needs to talk to Bonnie model, and they're going to have some sort of conversation and dialogue and tell us about it later. I mean, how will that work? And I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to find myself doing something because our models worked it out. I mean,
It might. And I think that as the model gets to know each of us individually better, they're going to have insights about us that maybe we're not even aware of, so that they're sharing their insights. Well, let me tell you what Mike thinks about this. Well, that's interesting because Bonnie thinks this about this. And that's where it could get a little bit tricky because it's not just the AI that's serving us. The AI is gaining knowledge about us as it goes.
Right. And then other people are creating models that remember things about you. I was talking to one fella, he says, airlines are going to create models that will have all your personal preferences wrapped into that. And when you go sit down, the television will automatically set up for you and all these other things.
Wow.
And I basically said, you know what I really want? I want a model that lets me know when the person sitting by the window is going to go to the bathroom so I can get my laptop gear down before they trip over everything.
Yes. And also if the plane's actually going to take off on time.
But yeah, well, there's that too. But, it turns out routing is one of the bigger challenges that we have out there. Mark, final words here on all this stuff with the chip wars. And are we just going to keep watching this, or eventually will we get bored and move on?
I think that anything that touches AI will probably be overinflated over the next couple of years. And so I just look for people that actually, or companies and products that actually solve a need and work and don't live up to the hype. I've been on a kick of overinflated AI demos from everyone from Google to AI devices. And at the end of the day, I'm a poor country boy from Pennsylvania, and until I see something work, I'm a little bit skeptical. So I think that's where we're at today is, don't believe the hype until you see things in action, but be prepared for the hype to become a reality at some point.
All right, folks. A wise man once said the future's here, but it's unevenly distributed, so we don't know how long it takes to get everywhere. But Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me.
Bonnie, good to see you again.
Pleasure to be here.
And folks, thanks for watching the latest episode of the Techstrong Gang. We invite you to stay tuned and watch all the other episodes on the Techstrong TV, including this next episode from Bob Russellman, who's going to be sharing his insights from that perch that he has where, he's a little grumpy sometimes, but he's fun to watch. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.